And hello, everyone. I'm Vidar with a look at the Justin Baldoni Blake Lively saga as it continues. I've been watching this. Gosh, has it been a year? It's been a year. And what's so interesting about the whole thing is I'm a retired journalist, 25 years experience. And the way that I was trained to cover stories is you present both sides and kind of mainstream media news, working local news stations across the country. However, I did do some hits for like CNN, Today Show, other national organizations throughout my career. What's interesting about all of this is was grilled in our head, for years and years, at least from where I came from, is that you always presented both sides of the story. So for me, it's been fascinating watching the mainstream, what they call the legacy media, versus the daddy and mommy sleuths on the web, which really are now kind of your new, I would call it a new form of investigative journalism, that is. So what I would like to do is present the difference between the legacy media and the mommy and daddy sleuths are so vastly different. It's interesting to see also what this has uncovered is that you have these publicists and these powerful celebrities and how they have such a hold on some of these mainstream mediazations. So, I always looked at it. I always looked at People Magazine, U.S. Weekly, kind of almost like you have Star Magazine here, which is like 100% not true. And then right here, you've got People Magazine, U.S. Weekly. Anytime you hear the word source, we would always say, listen, you have to verify your source. You have to reveal your source unless it's like some crazy investigative piece that is going to endanger that person's life. And you better have that sucker backed up. And you better have it once, twice, triple, quadruple checked if you're going to be revealing something as a source or like hearing their voice in it, with a kind of like a modified voice. So one thing that I've seen about like the People Magazine articles and I think Deadline is that they are definitely team Blake Lively. And then it's on the most part, except for like a few kind of like misconceptions you have, the internet sleuths, which are team Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer Party. You have in the middle, some of the news agencies will bounce back and forth a little bit. Primarily, I'm seeing them going towards the Blake Lively side because of the fact that her publicist, apparently, from what I'm gathering, this is just my interpretation of it, and I could be 100% wrong, but I think I've seen this kind of out there from other people who are in this kind of the PR business, is that her publicists are feeding some of these agencies like People, they're feeding them stories and they're taking their spin because there's so much information. When you read all these documents and you listen to all these documents, it takes hours. And journalists have that deadline. They have like, I've got to get this deadline. I've got to get it in today. So if someone's going to feed me something, I'll go with it. I'm going to try to make an attempt to get the other side. So a lot of times you'll say, well, we haven't heard from Baldoni's camp on the other side. But then they'll just go with that story and it's always a source. I'm not seeing anybody really coming out often, except for maybe some of the lawyers really like putting their name out there. So the source obviously is the big Blake Lively side, her publicist. It's the story. They went in through this slew of documents and they're going in there and they're pulling out what they want and they're spinning it. And I see that how you can see something and it's completely taken from the documents, the court documents, and it's spun a completely different way. So it's fascinating to watch. I mean, it's almost part of like looking into like the psychology of it and the pack mentality over here of this is the way it's always been, this is the way it's going to be. And you can have 10 people in the room that see something else, which is kind of appears to be happening. Okay, so with that said, I'd like us to start going through daily of what we're seeing in the mainstream media, which is, like I said, legacy media, and what they're reporting versus let's pull up what the internet sleuths are reporting. And again, you're going to see two completely different sides of the story. Okay, let's go to People, because People, what I've watched over this past year, loves Blake Lively. And I think I've seen maybe one or two stories that have been negative towards her. But this is Taylor's response to her text messages being leaked. And right here it says Taylor Swift wants to stay away from the drama after her texts with Blake Lively are unsealed. We're going to go through this article. Taylor says she wants to stay away from the drama after her private text messages with Blake Lively were made public. A source exclusively tells People magazine. Well, you know who that source is, right? That's Taylor Swift's camp. And it's always a source. So take it or leave it as you want. It's really hard to pinpoint who it is, but we know it's coming from that side. So correspondence between the pop star Lively 38, partially unsealed on Tuesday as part of the actress's ongoing legal dispute with Justin Baldoni and Wayfair Studios. Taylor feels her privacy was impacted. Anyone would be uncomfortable if their private texts were suddenly made public, explains the source. And from that side, yes, that is true. I think anybody whose texts have been revealed in this case from the beginning, from when Jen Abel's texts were revealed in the very, very beginning of this case, I think anybody can say that they feel absolutely violated. So when she's coming out and saying that, I think you can absolutely agree with that. However, if you go back to the source of it, this all came out when Blake Lively and her camp got a hold of Jen Abel's phone and basically through the New York Times put out in the world their texts, their private texts. All right, the singer-songwriter was among several celebrities whose messages appeared in unsealed court documents to the related case. Matt Damon and his wife were also in there. Her husband, Ryan Reynolds. Last December, Lively sued Baldoni. It ends with us co-star, director, and his production company, Wayfair Studios, and some of Baldoni's associates alleging sexual harassment and retaliatory smear campaign after she spoke up. Now, Baldoni countersued Lively and Reynolds for defamation and extortion, but the suit was dismissed. So Baldoni's lawyers are seeking to have the case tossed ahead of the trial. Now, if you hear some of the reports from the lawyers, internet sleuths, which you've got Not Actually Golden, Little Girl Attorney, what I've seen them saying on all of this is it's not getting the case tossed. Essentially, a summary judgment. It's basically putting the evidence before the court, and the court can decide, do we have enough evidence to go further? I think if they were trying to get the suit dismissed, that would be more of getting it tossed. So this is more fact-based is where we're at. So they're basically putting their defense in there, and they're saying, hey, listen, these are the facts. Blake Lively put in her facts, and with that two combined, the court will decide, is there a case here to move forward under the law? And that's different than having the case tossed, as People is reporting. Okay, scheduled to begin in May, they included Lively and Reynolds' messages with their famous friends and a trove of court filings ahead of the summary judgment hearing on Thursday, January 22nd. Portions of the released messages show Lively and Swift discussing the Gossip Girl alum's co-star and director, Justin Baldoni, and the situation surrounding It Ends With Us. In one text exchange, Lively asked Swift to endorse a revised version of the film script she was proposing, even without having read it, Baldoni's team alleges. Now, according to the legal filing, Swift replied, I'll do anything for you. Lively's attorney said the released texts are missing necessary context, pointing to Lively's deposition in which the actress said that she sent Taylor the script on her way to the apartment because Justin was still there. And I asked her to read him. I told her she didn't have to. I didn't want her to feel pressured to do that, but I hoped she would. So the singer had allegedly been on her way to visit her friend when Baldoni was present in Lively's home. Afterward, Lively wrote to Swift she was so especially heroic today and that she recapped every moment to Reynolds. Lively also referred to Baldoni as a clown and a doofus in messages to Swift, who allegedly referred to Baldoni as the B word. The source tells People Swift was just being a friend to Blake, and it's turned into something bigger than she ever expected. She never thought private messages would become public. Now Taylor is just trying to stay away from the drama, continues the source. A rep for Swift did not immediately return People's request for comment. Now, one thing I find interesting here is People is kind of saying, hey, there is a little bit of mean girl activity going on here. However, she was just being a good friend, yada, yada, yada. If you go to the internet sleuths, they're going to tell you that, hey, this goes a lot deeper than that. This goes to the fact that they believe that Taylor Swift colluded with Blake Lively in putting this out, essentially, that it shows that this happened before filming even started, that they started talking and kind of coming up with a plan to essentially not necessarily hijack, but possibly ambush him. And that started with Blake getting her scripts rewrites in the film and then slowly over time taking over the writing in the film. And that she used Taylor Swift as basically a powerful source to intimidate him into making that happen. And that Taylor was aware of that and was going out and essentially building up Blake in order to get her to, become more powerful. And that becomes more clear as the texts go on. But you're seeing that the legacy media is not really covering that. They're just covering the basic, hey, here's the story, here's some texts, here's what Taylor feels about it. And she feels betrayed. And of course, I think anybody would feel betrayed. The problem is Taylor was involved in what the internet sleuths are saying, that Taylor was involved in getting the stolen phone from Jen Abel, Justin Baldoni's publicist, and set of documents off of the phone. And that data was then taken out of context. So the word taken out of context and put in a New York Times article that essentially accused Justin Baldoni and the Wayfair team of harassment and retaliation in this case. So when you're worried about your private texts being brought out there, the case basically started because, according to the internet sleuths, there was some collusion involved in order to get that out. So let's keep reading. While Swift, whose song My Tears Ricochet is featured in It Ends With Us, is not party to the lawsuit, her name has come up in connection to the case several times. Sources previously told People that has had a chilling effect on her friendship with Lively. Lively previously referred to Swift as one of her dragons in an alleged text exchange, according to the complaint filed by Baldoni, in which alleged Swift had pressured him to accept Lively's rewrites in the movie. That's what we were just talking about. And in May, Baldoni's attorneys attempted to subpoena Swift, a move that Swift's rep slammed by saying it was intended to generate tabloid clickbait. At the same time, a source told People that Swift's friendship had halted. The pair's friendship dates back to 2015, after Lively shared a photo from a L'Oreal campaign in which referenced Swift's blood music. It caught Swift's attention. The pair began spending time together. Now, what's interesting about this is Swift's rep was saying it was intended to generate tabloid clickbait and did not really go into more details in this article about how Swift, I think it was a People article back then, I could be wrong, so don't hold me to this, but she had come out through a source or her rep saying essentially that she had nothing to do with any of this, that she essentially, basically she had just offered up her song. She didn't help with anything related to the movie. She didn't help basically anything with the movie, that she's just being used as clickbait in all of this. They left that part out because now the new texts show that she was involved in the whole kind of behind the scenes drama. It looks like Blake was attempting to take over the movie, according to the Baldoni party. So let's go now and listen to what the internet sleuths are saying about all of this and kind of how it's impacting Taylor. And I think the internet sleuths are primarily ranging from the fact that A, Taylor was involved, and that goes against what she had earlier said, and then B, a lot of people are talked about how they know that Blake is a quote unquote a mean girl and has a kind of a history and a reputation of being a mean girl in Hollywood, but that she now is essentially, Taylor is being brought into that people are seeing a side of her that they never kind of saw before, that Taylor was supposed to be this nice, pure, kind person. And another, I think, kind of point of contention that the internet sleuths are bringing up here is that they are feeling that she has fought so hard to regain her original masters, and that she fought really hard for basically her personal data, things that have belonged to her, her music. And she fought so hard for so long, kind of claiming that she was a victim that she didn't have her master's, and she finally won them back. So it was her kind of her proprietary, information. And now what people are saying, or at least some people are saying, is that, here she is kind of conspiring, potentially colluding behind the back to take this movie away from Justin Baldoni. On the flip side, I heard one internet content creator, Popcorn Planet Andy, he was saying, hey, listen, I've gone off when I've had my friends tell me certain things. She was just going off what her friend told her. And I think we were all essentially shocked and stunned when the New York Times article came out. We believed Blake Lively at the time. And that as new information came out, we changed our mind. So give Taylor a break and let her essentially do that too. This is The Nerve with Maureen Callahan, and boy, is she a feisty one. So she's sitting down and interviewing. The article goes, what Taylor Swift's mean girl texts with Blake Lively reveal about her career. And this is with Rob Shooter. And they're sitting down and they're talking about, is this going to impact Taylor Swift? Taylor Swift has such a strong image, and she has done so well over her career being able to create this image, and she's got her Swifties, and they're so loyal. And are they going to be do or die, or are some people going to say, the public image that Taylor Swift has created over so many years and has built up this just mega powerhouse empire in the music business, will some of that be cracked into? Well, let's listen to what they have to say.
Oh, we're seeing these legal documents in which, Blake and Taylor are texting each other, and Taylor's calling Justin Baldoni a little bitch. And, Blake saying, oh, Taylor, you were so epically heroic and you made up all this shit about me and how I knew how to use lenses and direct. And oh, my God, I'm reenacting all of this for Ryan.
So she's referring to the point where Taylor Swift did end up coming to the penthouse, to Blake and Ryan's penthouse. And, they're there going through the script. So there were 2 times they went to the penthouse. This was one of them. There might have been a third, but I think there's 2 for sure, where Justin Baldoni was going up. They, behind the scenes, had rewritten the rooftop scene. Blake pitched it as she had rewritten the rooftop scene and really wanted him to change the script of the rooftop scene. And she, according to those texts we read through the people, she had texted Taylor ahead of time, hey, come on over. I need you to back me up. I need you to tell him how great I am and that we should use my script, my new scene rewrite for the rooftop scene. Of course, we found out later, through Blake Lively's own words, that her husband had written that rooftop scene. That was never revealed to really anybody until I think Blake had, one of the premieres, had talked to a journalist about that. So let's listen in further as could this impact Taylor's career?
I think we all deep down knew that Blake Lively was a mean girl. Like it's well documented. Everybody's seen those interviews. Whenever there's an interview with her on the red carpet, normally my staff love to go to those things. They love to talk to celebrities. If I said tonight there's a premiere with Angelina Jolie, I'd have 10 staff.
Anyways, I have to pause this in between so we don't get any violations on copyrights. But I do want to point out, watch this whole interview. It's really, really interesting because this Rob Shooter, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Rob, he has some insight behind the scenes. And he's saying that, listen, he has a staff that he sends out to do these interviews on the red carpet. Usually it's kind of come out for years that Blake, we've seen video after video, Blake can be mean to the reporters. She can be mean to people. And so normally his staff loves to go out and interview anybody. When it comes to Blake, let's listen in further.
Staffers who want to go in the one spot. Whenever there's a premiere with Blake Lively, not one person in my office wants to go because
she is a bitch supreme.
She's a really awful human being.
So you're hearing kind of some insight behind the scenes of what people have thought of her for years. You're hearing over and over again from people like Rob that she has not been nice to people over the years. Let's listen a little bit more about Blake Lively and then Taylor Swift, and then I'll move on to another article.
We should have known. Water finds its own level. This Taylor thing took me a little by surprise. I'll admit I was naive here. I really bought into the Taylor stuff here. I thought she had been ambushed. I wanted to believe. It just goes to show you, we believe what we want to believe. I wanted to believe that Taylor was not a mean girl. I knew Blake was. And now I'm not quite as sure about this, and these texts are not going to stop.
So going back into, even him, I think everyone had this perception, again, the psychology of it, like the Swifties, the do or die. Swifties will be Swifties. You're still going to have people stay with her, stick with her. You're having some people might question her and then go back. She's come out now and said, hey, I feel horrible. I feel like a victim. I think you're still kind of seeing, if you go back into the articles, I'm going to switch us back into a different article and find a different article that we can see to see kind of what else is going out there in the mainstream media. So, and what's interesting about it too is most people are going to be seeing the headlines of mainstream media, and that headline is a lot of times all that's really read, that and maybe like the first paragraph, because we have a society that's wants things quick. So Yahoo too, also how Taylor Swift reportedly feels after her texts with Blake Lively were exposed. Taylor Swift reportedly feels violated after Blake Lively texts were exposed. And now you can see, since this is a couple days old, people are starting to feed new articles related to Taylor Swift. Their sources are feeding articles to the magazines to push down Taylor Swift's activities in the this case. So what happens is they feed new articles that make Taylor Swift look great, and so Taylor doesn't look as bad. So we do see an hour ago, time to look back at Taylor Swift's 14 Grammys over the years. It's just all of a sudden all this came out over her Grammys. Producer breaks silence on Taylor Swift's performance rumors. She's fully focused on her life with Travis. So all these different kind of really positive stories coming out. Taylor Swift beats her own record with another week at #1. That came out right when these other things came out. So that's what you're seeing on the Taylor Swift side. Let's pull up. We'll go back to the internet sleuths and how they're discussing and covering the Taylor Swift declares war on Blake after the cruel plot against Justin Baldoni exposed. Listening to Katie with Without a Crystal Ball, she was saying, listen, if you really break down these texts, you're going to see that Taylor was part of that kind of the takeover with Blake, encouraging to go after a man, feminism, all of that was involved. So listen real quick, talking about these Taylor Swifts and how she's talking to the media.
Taylor Swift is apparently not happy that her texts are now public and is running to the tabloids to reaffirm her displeasure with getting involved in this lawsuit, and is acting as though public disclosure of communications between her and her friend Blake are somehow a violation of her privacy, despite the fact that it was her friend that sued Mr. Baldoni, and it's her friend that is suing Mr. Baldoni, and it is her friend that continues to sue Mr. Baldoni.
I think one thing that's interesting about this and the insight in here is that you're hearing about, Blake. I think Ryan also coming out saying he was upset that his texts were revealed. I think there's kind of that victim mentality on that side. One thing that Without a Crystal Ball is pointing out is for so long, Blake has been saying, listen, don't pull Taylor into this. She's just a friend. She's an innocent victim alongside of this. But she originally had put Taylor on the docket as a witness for her. So she actually brought her into it. And you got to understand with the way the law works, if one person brings someone into it, the other side has to go out and try to gather information around that as well. With this situation, she's just talking about, I think further, as what I mentioned earlier, is that you're coming out and saying, hey, listen, Blake is the one that should be to blame here. Blake's the one that brought her into all of this. So listen, I'm going to just kind of start out wanting to kind of research some of this to see what people thought, the difference between pulling up the mainstream media versus the internet sleuths as part of a way to break this down further, because I think it is so interesting. I think you just see such an opposite side in the way some of these legacy magazines are reporting this versus the people that are going in more in depth online. I do want to encourage that if you are interested in like what I brought up with some of these online reporters, go and check them out. Go check out Without a Crystal Ball. Go check out Maureen. And listen, if you have any questions for me, if you want me to cover something else, just leave a comment in the comments below. Thanks for watching.